Hi there, this is David Oakham speaking. I thought I'd get working on some 3D tiles. These are from the advanced set, Darkfast Dungeons advanced set. In order to get the tiles built, 3D tiles, you need to get the flat tiles. The flat tiles are in the basic set of Darkfast Dungeons. They are printed out and mounted onto an illustration board. Then they can be put in. So when you print out the walls, you can fold them flat and then put the flooring in there. Then you've got yourself something nice and flat to store, and you've got it made. So to build it up, you can see these little tabs at the bottom. Make sure those are folded over, and just slot this right in here, and you've got yourself a 3D dungeon tile. You combine these with other dungeon tiles like this one, which is a room. You can get yourself a dungeon pretty quick. It fills up a table. So I wanted to show you that because what I want to do is I want to hack this a little bit, create something a little different. So taking this room, what I'm going to do is I printed this off multiple times. I'm going to build these today, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially have double this length, and that way I'll have a longer hall and a wider hall. Just to add some variety to the game, to add some variety to the sets that I have, and I thought perhaps eventually, including this as part of an expansion, or selling it as rooms or something like that, or you could hack it yourself. What I did was I opened up the PDF into a photo editing program, in this case Photoshop, but you could use a GIMP or something similar to that. I just made sure that I extended the walls, extended the flooring. I tightened up this a bit so that this dotted line disappeared, so that it looked pretty much like one flat floor. If you are not willing to take it into a photo editing program, you could just simply get rid of this dotted line with a black marker. You just have to be careful. Make sure you're not cutting or make sure you're not covering up the printed out tile. So I'm just going to start building some of this, or cutting some of this. I know it's difficult to see because my hand is in the way. I might have to move the camera. But you always should cut away from you, never cut towards yourself while you're cutting. Just make sure you know where your blade is at all times. I can use a ruler. I often use a metal ruler for this, but I kind of trust my cutting enough that I don't usually use it. Just making sure I'm cutting on the cutting board and not on the table. This is always a struggle. And then I've already cut this side, so I'm going to just go over this side, and I'm going to move the camera a bit so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Just getting used to this new camera, and I like it better than just having the camera on the laptop, because I can move the camera around, I can put it down to the level of the miniatures, I can show people what they're looking at when I'm doing any online gaming. It's quite handy. Okay, so once you've got your basic floor cut out, you got a section, and that itself is pretty handsome. I'm going to be mounting this onto some of this illustration board. I got this illustration board pretty cheap at an art store. You can get yours at Michael's, you can get it at other places as well. It's like mat board. I know that I've found certain places like framing stores that just throw the stuff away by the dumpster full, and you can get it. Any sort of heavier card will do. It's a little bit heavier than say cereal boxes, but you could even layer a couple of those and get yourself a fairly solid tile. The main thing is I don't want these things to warp. So in order to avoid warping, you have to kind of get a tile that's fairly high quality. I find that mat board tends to be the best bet in this case because it's used for framing and generally is high quality. So once I've cut this out, I'm going to cut out This is to double the section of the regular room for the tiles. I'm going to look at the walls. So let me get the walls out. Whoop. Of course, the camera falls right over. All right. Well, the walls are printed out like this, and in order to get a room or a hall that's twice the length, I'm going to have to join them up somehow. I'm also going to have to, I'm going to have to work pretty hard to make this work. So here's what I've got on this tile, cutting out the edge, and I'm going pretty fast. It doesn't have to be too pretty as long as it's workable. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, since I wanted to just make sure I had that piece cut out here, I'm just going to cut out that section, just so that I can line this up. I'm going to use my steel ruler. You don't have to use a steel ruler, but I like to use one. It doesn't cut up the ruler, and it makes a nice straight line. I'm going to create this scoring on here. What the scoring does is it lets you fold the cardboard easier and more smoothly. And I've got now a back and a front. I like to use Yoo-hoo sticks. Some people will use other things like white glue, that kind of thing. I find white glue tends to ripple this thinner cardstock, or ruin it anyway. I don't really like the experience of that. The main reason I like to cut it is because I don't want to put glue on the bottom of these things. So what I tend to do is figure out where this is here. This line is kind of the separation of the base and the wall, and I don't want to glue that area. So just to be on the safe side, I often will block that out. I also don't want to put glue on that other section there. And I'm going to be doing something a little bit different with this set, and I'm going to be attaching a wall, or continuing to the wall down. So you'll see how I change things as I go. This section here shouldn't have any real glue behind it, and if it does, that's what this is for. I can use this extra cardboard and put it down as I fold it over. Okay, so I'm going to fold that over to start with. And this is called burnishing. Burnishing basically spreads the glue around, flattens it out, gets rid of any air bubbles. The danger, of course, is that you're going to move glue to areas where you don't want glue to be. So that's what this stuff is for. So I'm going to be putting basically pieces of cardboard in those sections. And you get lots of extra when you cut this up, so it's not like you're looking for extra cardboard or trying to find it. And I'm just going to put it there. Now I don't need a whole lot of extra room in here, so I'm just going to do it like that. Okay. I don't need a whole lot of extra room in here because I'm going to slip a piece like that into here to join the pieces together. And then at the bottom here, I'm going to use this to join that. Okay. Just that. What these pieces do is they help. If there is any glue in those sections, it'll dry to this, and then I just peel that off, and then the object isn't glued to itself. Okay. Now I want to make sure this glue is burnished, but I also want to make sure it dries flat. You can see it's got a bit of a ripple to it. One thing you can do is put stuff on it. You can place something that's already done on top of it. But whatever you want to do, I'm just going to set that aside and let that dry. While I'm doing that, I'm going to work on the next piece. Okay, I'm going to need 4 of these to do a long haul. In fact, I'm going to probably have to cut some of this off in order to do the long haul. So that's going to be a little bit different from what I normally do. But in the meantime, I'm just going to get the whole thing ready to go. So that's what this is going to look like. And what I will do is I'll come back in part 2, and I will update this with some cut section. In this section, I just wanted to take a look at the cutting the mat board. So the mat board itself is, well, illustration board in this case. I got a pretty good deal on this. And what I've done basically is get a board that's fairly sturdy, because what I want to do is I want to build the flooring. Now the flooring has to kind of hold down the cardstock in the room, so you've got to, it's got to be fairly strong and not warp, especially when you get bigger pieces. So foam core would be too thick for this because you wouldn't be able to get through the door. One thing I often do is I will edge these pieces, and edging just basically, you know, makes you go across the edge here with a pen, and I can show you that. Well, I'll show you that on this with this one. What you do is essentially get the area here, and you put the black ink on here. I like to use the Faber-Castell pens. I find that they're quite handy. They're out of focus, but there it is. Let me see if I can get it in focus. I'm still learning how to use this camera, of course. And I find that edging like this with a marker just really, you know, finishes off the work. So for example, on these white edges, just carefully drag your marker. You could use a Sharpie for this. I like these pens because they have a bit more control. I find they last a little longer. And I draw with them. So, multi-purpose tools here. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm just covering up the white lines, and this will just add to the finish of the piece, so that it looks better on the table. Nothing says it's been cut out of cardboard more than a white outline. And yeah, it has been cut out of cardboard, but I want this to have a very nice aesthetic when you see it. So I will take some time to edge this once it's cut out. I will get back to this one shortly. You don't want to do the whole darn thing while you're sitting here, but as you can see, I want to show you the difference. When you put this back in here with the edging, it just looks more finished. It looks better, right? And you'll see that this has been edged as well, so that, you know, there's no white. And if there's white spots that appear, you can always, you know, go over them and just make sure that they're edged, and that will finish it up and make it look a lot better on the table. Okay, so that's where I'm at here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pieces that I've cut up already. I'm going to use existing edges. I find that using an edge already there tends to speed up the process of cutting. I have fewer cuts to make, and they're already straight, so that works. Okay, so I'm going to use a pencil, and I'm going to block this in. All right, and okay, I've also in the past measured it out 4 inches across with a ruler. This might be more accurate, but that's about how big it is. Now I want to make sure that I have enough for the bottom piece. It's not going to go along the bottom, so I'm going to have to build it along the side or cut it along the side. So 4 by 8. Just carefully measure twice, cut once. I often have to measure more than twice. I am numerically challenged. Sometimes can't keep numbers in my head. Alright, and 8 inches down, and just join that up. Okay, so what I'm going to do So I'm going to use my cutting tool, and I'm going to cut this out. This X-Acto knife might be a little light to cut this, so I might get a heavier blade. So that's what I'm going to go do right now. All right, so this blade is a little heavier duty than the last one. It's an X-Acto. This one's probably better off for finer cutting. It's very sharp. This blade is a little more of a hackmaster. So just going to use this and carve into here. Sometimes I find it's just easier to just use it without the ruler. Alright, so you gotta put a little bit of pressure down, and in fact I'm feeling that it's not cutting all the way through, so I may need to just go over it twice. Never cut in, we'll get this here, toward yourself. I find that's tempting, but it's better to go across. I find you get an even cut. So that looks like I went through. I didn't need 2 cuts. So just standing up, I'm going to go over and get this section here. So take your time. In fact, I'm probably going to use this to cut across this way. I'm going to take the section out first. I'll find I'll have better control. One thing that I really kind of want to be careful with this is making sure nothing's underneath. I don't know how many times I've had stuff underneath what I'm cutting and just totally ripped it to shreds. Oh, there's a puppy dog who is not happy with me. You might hear whining in the background there. Alright. So there. After I've scored that again, I think. Yeah, first part's great. Second part, not so much. A little bit of pressure. That wasn't too bad. What I like to do at this point, just make sure everything's going to work. Don't want to rip it, so I'm just going to score it one more time. There we go. And then what I'll do, I'll put this aside here and show you how to glue this on. Hey, welcome back. What I've done here is I've started edging these pieces. I've cut 2 haul lengths, the sections that are going to cover this, and I'm just going to go over with a rough black line. This is because sometimes what's measured and what's cut, they're not exactly lining up, and some of this might show through. So I'm going to just not take any chances and do that so I can line that up. And if there's anything that overlaps or doesn't overlap, then it's covered. So I'm also going to edge the edge of this. Get rid of that nasty cut paper look here. But seriously, if I could get black paper to print on, oh, that would be so delightful. Or have pre-edged paper. I don't know how you do that. But edging is worth it. I think it looks really good when it's all done. Alright, there we go. Okay, so I'm pre-edging this because I find it difficult to edge this lighter paper, or this lighter cardstock, once it's on the mat board. Sometimes you miss sections and you have an uneven edging. Honestly, really the edging is just really most important on the ends here for this kind of terrain. Okay, so once I've got that, I'm gonna apply a liberal amount of glue stick. I usually do the edges right to the edge fairly consistently, and then a bit of zigzaggy work on here. Okay, random is good. I find that you should get the edges mainly because that's where it peels up the most. And because this is fold flat terrain, you're constantly lifting it and putting it back on. You want to make sure that the edges are as clean as possible. So I want to make sure this is carefully lined up. There we go. So that there's not too much overlap. There. This burnishing is really important to flatten it out, get rid of any air bubbles, but also to spread the glue around so that it creates a better bond. Okay? So there is a nice tile section, about twice the size of this one, and yeah, that's what you've got there. So our sections are going to come up to it like this, or in the middle, wherever the tiles are. I'm mainly doing this because I wanted to have a wider selection of tiles, but I also wanted bigger rooms on the table. So this is how I'm getting that done. All right. Next, I'm going to finish up a wall section, and I'll show you how to join the walls together to make a longer wall to set this up. Okay, so I'll be right back. All right, I've taken out the guides to help with the overlap, and I'm going to start getting this ready. So I've got 4 pieces that are the same, and I'm going to cut them out. Now I have to do something a little bit different as I cut these out. And that is, I have to make sure that they can line up with each other to make this part of the wall twice as long. So it's going to take a little bit of concentration to do that, but it shouldn't be too hard. So, when you're working with X-Acto knives, you want to be really careful. I find my major source of injuries are paper cuts. That's one I have right here. Nice little paper cut I gave myself. Just moving paper along. I don't know. I seem to have okay luck with X-Acto knives, but when it comes to paper, not so much. All right, so I'm starting to build this out. Cutting along those edges. And once I got this cut out, I'm going to score the areas that are going to get scored. Now, because I'm doing something a little bit different in the instructions, you're going to see that I'm going to take off this section here. But before I do that, I'm going to carefully section this off. Well, one way to do that is to score it and bend it. I've already kind of pre-scored this, so it's just coming right off. And it looks like there's an extra piece of the paper that I put in there. So I'm just going to peel that right off. That'll come right off. There you go. And then that piece should just fold right over. Okay. I'm going to do this so that when I fold it, it folds along the line. I'm going to keep this section straight. I'm not going to cut that because that's going to slot into this other piece in a few minutes. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to score along here. And that's going to let me fold this up and over. So I've got a nice bend to the wall. This wall piece, there's sort of the door piece here, I'm going to carefully cut out. Carefully because I don't want to cut the base, this white part at the bottom that holds the flooring. Best advice I can give you in terms of cutting with an X-Acto knife, of course, is to cut away from yourself, but always use a fresh blade. You really thank yourself. If the blade snaps, I will sometimes keep that away for cutting heavier stuff, like I did with this one. But you'll never regret a fresh blade. Just pops right out. Okay. Now, because it's going to be folded like that, it shouldn't be too much problem. You'll see some stress on the outside. We're going to go over that once we do the edging with a marker. So I'll just quickly show you on this one. So that stress stuff will disappear and look like a nice solid line. And the white stuff around the edges here as well will be edging with a bit more care as we go along. Now, little pieces like that go over, not a big deal. Just be slow, be careful. It happens. But you just want to make sure that your edges are clean. Alright, I'm going to get going on the next piece, and I can show you how these are going to join up, and that's going to be the exciting part, how this piece is going to fit in here. So what I'm actually going to have to do is cut this out and make sure that that will fit in here. Might be a little tricky, but I have guide pieces that have been designed to build in there to make a bit of an area. This might be a little big. I might have to trim that. We're going to find out. So I'm going to cut this out, and I'll be back with the joining. We'll see how it works. Okay, see you in a bit. All right, so I've cut the sections down, and I've edged a bit on the one section of the wall that's there, so it's not all white, and I'm going to put it on here. Now you might notice a bit of rippage. That was coming from taking the section apart. Once that's glued down, it will make a difference. So I'm going to use a little bit of white glue. You'll see that I have a little dab of white glue on here. This is just your standard school glue. White, clear, it dries clear. You don't want to use too much of it, or else it's going to get a little warpy. I want to put enough on the inside here on both sides so that it stays. Make sure it's up on the right side. Slot that in, and here you go. I'm going to push this down on this side so that the section, alright, yeah, the section that ripped, I want to make sure it's nice and crisp, nice attachment there so that you don't see the rip. And the white glue should dry nice and straight. Okay. Now I can put that down so that it dries flat, and set that aside. And then all I'll need is two sections here. So as I've noticed, I won't need this section here. I'm going to hold on to these sections and use them as sections I can just bobby pin to as floating walls. I can bobby pin to existing sections and add extra doors and extra rooms. So that's what I'm going to do with that. I'm going to need some of this to fit in, so I'll figure that out as I go. In the meantime, I'll let you take a look of that as I organize that. But basically, I'm going to just have a section that fits over here and joins up those two walls. So I'll get going on that, and then I'll update you as that section's built. Okay, talk to you soon. Okay, now that I got both sections of the wall, the long wall cut out here, I'm going to put this inside there. I'm going to use the white glue to attach that. So I'm going to put some glue along here. Alright, so this is joining up the two edges of the short wall to make the long wall. And I like to put glue on both sides. Now you don't want to put too much glue down, or else it's going to warp. But you also need to put enough glue so that it will stay together, and especially because I'm going to do fold flat, I want to make sure that it'll stand up to a lot of use. Okay, so attaching that section in here to this section here. One thing I'm going to do is before I do that, is I'm going to edge that. So edging will help get rid of the white lines. Alright, so that it doesn't look as crummy. Alright, so that section there and that section there, putting that together, make sure that's lined up. Once I got that lined up, I can just apply some pressure. White glue really responds well to a bit of pressure. And then I'm going to set that aside like I did the other one, so that this section here will dry nice and straight. And then I get to join up my sections, and then I'll be done this longer hallway section, this wider hallway section, and I'll have more variety in my dungeon setups. Okay, so I'll be back once that's dry. Takes a few minutes, about 5 minutes, and then I'll just start joining up these edges. Yay! All right, I'll be right back. All right, so I just edged a bit here. I'm going to join that up to there. I'm going to make this all one thing. So I'm going to use some of this white glue. I usually use a extra scrap piece of cardboard that's lying around. Some people like to use a brush. I don't like to ruin brushes that way. But again, I want to make sure this is going to stand up to a lot of use. So I'm going to slide this in here. Oh yeah. Okay. And get rid of the extra glue. Try and line that up as best I can. Squeeze it. A little bit of pressure. A few minutes of pressure makes a huge difference. Actually, a few seconds of pressure makes a huge difference. And then I'm going to join it up on this side in the same way. So let me just make sure this is nice and clear for joining up. Yep, that looks like it'll do. And just going to put some glue in there. Oh, put some glue on here, I should say. Yeah, it's going everywhere. Okay. And again, I'm going to edge the intersection that goes on the inside there because it's hard to get after it's built. But again, edging makes everything look better. Don't forget to edge. You will thank me later. Alright, so just edging. This takes a few seconds, but it makes all the difference. And when you forget to edge, you notice. Okay, so I'm going to slide that into here. I'm not really paying attention to see if I'm showing this properly or not, so I should probably slow it down a bit. Noticing a couple of sections here are not quite glued, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue with a thinner piece into these sections to make sure that it's nice and solid. And a little bit of pressure goes a long way. Make sure it's nice and straight. This has got to be edged, but I can't wait. So I'm going to show you how it looks with the base in. So I've got the bases. These were the bases here, making sure they're not warping or bending. Man, it worked. So I have a section. Now it's still a little wonky because it's just being glued, but it will dry flat, and I will have a section of a dungeon that's bigger, and that will be very helpful. Ooh, flying cam. So to show you how it all kind of joins up, once this is added in, I can take this section of hallway and join it up there. Now, you can always attach these with bobby pins so that it all kind of stays together. And this is a bigger room that joins up. Oh, need the floor. Floors are important for people to walk around on. But yeah, it didn't take too long. I kind of did it ad hoc. I might do a more formal version of this, but as you can see, it's not too difficult to kind of bash your own kit together and create your own bigger hallways. I like a bigger hallway because then I can put some pillars down the middle or some statues or things along the side and create something interesting. All right. Well, there you go. That's the kit bash. Not so bad. I'll have 2 sections when I'm all done. I'll build the rest of it, and I will have something that I can add some variety to my sets. Okay, thanks so much. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. All right. Well, here's the finished piece. I think it turned out pretty well, considering it was just originally a room piece that I just extended. Now this room has the central door, which is the standard, and yeah, so that's pretty much what it's come to look like, and I think it will make it an interesting game. So you can add the door sections to make a bigger complex. And then, of course, these all fold flat. So for folding flat, what I do is I keep my dungeons in a binder on a bookshelf. And so I keep them in these I guess sleeves that are usually used to protect documents. So I can pull my dungeon sections out. So the walls I keep one section, and then the floors I keep over here. So what I generally do is get all these pieces out. Is I have a variety of sections to work with. So if I have something a little more complex, which is like this section here, I will get the intersection and place this in here. Now generally, to get the shape back, sometimes after it's been this has been sitting in a fold flat folder for quite some time, I have to re-bend the sections to get the shape back, but it doesn't take too much or too long. And once I fold over the base underneath, those tabs that hold the floor in, I generally just pop the floor in here, and I get the shape back, which is pretty much what you see right there. So that section there is now pretty much done. I could refold that one section just to get that. There you go. Get that shape, and now I have a intersection which I can use in the dungeon. Continuing along with that, I've got more complex shapes, like this one. Oh, I guess I have in my own binder still. I have a few more complex shapes that I can get out and use, and then I can put all those together and create a whole little dungeon here. So I'll get this organized, but just to show you what it can all look like once it's together. Here is the piece I just built, and I can put in a couple of figures from the Darkfast set, and let me get a baddie. I'll put a roper, Mr. Roper, right there. So then I have a section they have to get by the roper to get to the next part of the dungeon. Let's say there's an ogre waiting for them over here with some treasure. I don't know, the roper has made some sort of special deal so that it'll guard it. So yeah, so if I wanted, I could even get this so that you can see where the characters are, so that they can have their battle. It kind of adds to the complexity of what you can see down here, especially with the bigger hallway. You can have more variety of action. You can have more objects in the room as well for them to interact with. The tile itself. Let me just see if I can get this to work. There you go. I can get down to their level and basically show what they see. So you can have some focus shifting from one room to the next as they go through, and then I can show an overview as well of what the floor plan looks like so far. So yeah, I'm pleased with the way it came out. I hope that you can see that it's not too difficult to put together. It looks really good when it's done. The other really nice thing, I think, for me, that I like the best is that it all just comes apart. Now, to fold this flat, let me just push this back a bit so you can see. Folding it flat isn't that hard, but you have to follow a couple rules. First rule is to make sure all the tabs that hold the floors in are standing straight up, and then it can fold over. If you don't do that, you bend the tabs and it can have some distortion, a little bit of warpage, and the floors won't go in as easily. So just to put the floor back in, once you've got it unflattened, just pop the floor in and it will snap back to its basic shape, and you will have a handsome addition to any adventure, I think. So there you go. That's it. I will follow up if I think of anything else, but I think that's everything I need to talk about right now. Thanks a lot. Look for the Advanced Walls Darkfast Dungeons basic set and the advanced set. You need the basic set to get the advanced set going, because it has the bases in them, so the floor plans that you can cut out from the regular cards. Now, I did mention that you can attach these with bobby pins, and just to kind of show that, I've got a little container of bobby pins here, and it doesn't take one or two per section. Line it up, that's what I always do, and then just take a bobby pin, pop it on one side, and then a bobby pin, pop it on the other side, and now you can actually lift your entire dungeon section and move it around and store it, and put it where you want to go, and it's all ready, so you can have your little adventures all taken care of, and that way you don't have to worry about walls shifting or peeling out, and you don't really notice the bobby pins very much. They do blend in quite nicely to the decor. If you want, you can make them a little more flush to the walls, and yeah, you don't have as much to worry about in terms of the sections breaking apart if people are banging the table or getting all excited and rolling dice. It's not as bad. Okay, so there you go. If you're interested in a very economical way to build a 3D dungeon, this is kind of a fun way to do it, and it's a bit of crafting as well. Okay, so thank you for your time, and I hope you learned something. See you later.